Hey guys, I'm Annie Allen, a certified divorce coach, RCSD divorce realtor, and your host for the Starting Over Stronger Divorce Survival and Recovery podcast, the show that's all about bringing you the practical, professional help you need as you divorce and hope for creating a life you'll love after. I don't skim the surface around here. If you want to dive deep into the wholehearted wisdom of how to have a better divorce experience than everyone else you know by changing what you do, this is the podcast for you. After a lifetime in dysfunctional relationships and over a decade in recovery, I'm ready to share everything I've learned and everything I'm still learning, along with the collective wisdom of amazing divorce professionals and divorce survivors. Because I believe the keys to a better divorce and healthier relationships to come should never be a secret. The enlightening and unconventional wisdom you'll find here is actionable and sometimes even fun, like friends chatting over coffee. So come listen in for a fresh, honest look at doing divorce differently. Starting Over Stronger is here for you, for the help and hope you need before, during, and after your divorce. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Starting Over Stronger show, where you'll find help and hope for your divorce survival and recovery. Divorce well, live well.
Today is the first day in the October series Season of Changes, and we're going to kick it off with one of the major changes probably all women anyway face when they are going through a divorce, and maybe some men too. Their work lives, how they spend their days, changing dramatically as they go through a divorce, going from maybe a stay-at-home mom or dad to a working woman or major career changes. And I am pleased to be here today with the lovely Misty Hughes. Hello and welcome, Misty.
Hi, Annie. Thank you.
Yes. Misty is the founder of Single Mom KC and a mother of 4 grown children. And how many grandchildren did you say you have, Misty?
We have 5 grandchildren.
Okay. And they're spread out all across the U.S. And Misty has recently made the transition to a full-time women's life and leadership coach. And I'll let her tell you more about that later. But that is with her organization called Lead Her Ministries. So let's just start by telling us a little bit about you, Misty, your life, your divorce, your family, your new love, and your ministries.
My new love, yes. Okay, we'll get to that, right?
Yeah.
So, I went through the process of separation and divorce back in 98. It was about a 2-year process. So in 2000, I had 4 kids, ages 2 to 13 at the time. I was a full-time stay-at-home mom. Involved. We were a homeschool family. So that took, most of my day. So I wasn't an idle mom. I was a very busy stay-at-home homeschooling mom, loved educating my children and being involved in, their growing process and everything. And then my ex-husband, made some decisions that took him away from the family and the home. And so just had to navigate a lot of change during that time, Annie, as I'm sure you and many, many of your guests have shared about. So I continued to stay at home as much as possible, and we can talk about that a little bit more. But over the course of the years, I worked in children's ministry, and then around 2008, I started a nonprofit that focused on the emotional and spiritual well-being of single moms and their children. So for the whole family, it was about the restoration of family, and did that, loved that journey for many years as I was raising my children and launching them into adulthood, which is another big season of change, did that 4 times. Then they got married, which is another season of change, and have grandkids, seasons of change. So somebody once said about my life, Misty, I love watching your life because you're in perpetual transition. And and I thought about that and I thought, I don't know if that's good or bad, but
Yeah.
having 4 children at different ages, always someone stepping into, whether it's leaving the home or something, job changes, house changes, single moms move a lot. And while we didn't move every year, we had, 5 or 6 house changes during that time. And then in 2020, I finally came to the place where I was able to step away from the leadership role in the nonprofit I started. We hired an executive director, another huge season of change. I got married, a huge season of change. And now I'm developing my own business. So yeah, lots of change.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so I guess on that note, I really want to talk about that part of it. If you don't mind elaborating a little bit more on what that major life transition looked like for you, as far as your career, how you spent your days, what changed for you during the divorce season of your life and then becoming a single mom.
Yeah. I think first the reality that, oh, wow, I'm responsible for a whole lot more today than I was yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just embracing that new reality of my life and then looking at what my values were and how I could stay true to my values. But so like I said, I was a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling, involved in the education of my kids and everything. And then suddenly the realization that I have to bring some income into our home. And what does that look like? And so I, thought about a lot of different things and opportunities. And for me, what that looked like is because I wanted to continue to homeschool, at least for the first year after, my husband left, that was cleaning houses. And so I was able to work that out in my own schedule and maintain at least some of our same rhythm in our life at home. And so, And so over the course of the years, it looked different. But yeah, it was just, I look at it as I didn't go find a career outside of the home. I worked jobs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The jobs were not, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. This is what I'm made for. It was, I need to bring income in. And what can I get the most bang for my buck with? Here was a big thing, Annie. What do I not have to think about? Because as you know, going through a divorce, the emotional trauma and the things that consume your mind, it's exhausting. And I needed something that I didn't have to think about and didn't have to bring back home with me. So that's what I did. That's what I found.
You took what I like to think of as the making it work path. We're just making it work from 1 month to the next, 1 week to the next, just doing what has to be done. That's awesome. And I'm sure that you've met all kinds of amazing women in your work with single mom Casey and seen a lot of different ways that looks. Maybe that do the making it work thing. And then maybe some who, maybe every other version of that, from stay at home to going to a full-time, corporate job, and probably everything in between. What would you say might be the most remarkable or the most common scenario that you've seen in your work with single women and how they make that transition? That's a big question.
Well, that is a big question. And it's true, and you mentioned this, is we all have a different story, and everybody's process through that transition is going to look different. Yeah. And every woman or man has to determine what is best for me and my family.
Yes.
And how do I move forward? And so I think the thing, and I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but the thing that I think of is we need support in the process, no matter what. We can't do it alone. And so I don't know if there's like one like success story over another, but yeah, women who have launched into a full-time career from being a stay-at-home mom, started their own business or trying to start their own business after being a stay-at-home mom. And okay, I just need this job. I'm just going to do what I can do to help make ends meet for this season of life. Type of thing. So they're all different, but without somebody kind of helping along, even just conceptualize what that means or what's important to me or what should I do, we just need the support of outside voices.
Yeah. And I think really the answer is that there is no one answer. There is no right or wrong answer. There is just simply a lot of choices. And I can remember when I was going through my divorce, so many people would say to me, you could do anything. That's got to be so freeing. And I was like, you have no idea how incapacitating that is to actually be in a position where you could do anything and you have no idea what you want to do.
Right.
Like it sounds like it would be great, but it's really can be very, just crippling, almost
overwhelming. Yeah.
Very much. Yeah. And so the thing that always came to the surface for me, and I see it in a lot of my clients, is that it's almost like we're in that college stage again, that stage right after high school when we're figuring out, do we want to learn a trade? Do we want to go to a university? Do we want to start our own business? Do we want to string together more than one part-time job? Do we have to string together at least a full-time and a part-time job to make ends meet? And, obviously then you add to that all the factors of whether or not, we're going through a divorce and paying for attorney's fees. And if we're going to have any spousal or child support to help in that equation. So it's just a lot of moving parts. And I think that's probably the best answer to that question that I asked. And that is simply that there is no one answer.
Yeah. And can I kind of, as you were talking, I was thinking, I think too, we have to give ourselves time, and time is our friend, because like you said, you were in that place and people are like, you can do whatever you want. You can be whoever you want. You get to create your own future. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to get through today.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Can I just get through today? And we often don't have the capacity to begin to conceptualize what that future, what we want that to look like. What am I created for?
Yeah.
What are the dreams of my heart? And so, especially initially, and sometimes it takes a couple years, depending on the trauma that you're coming out of, depending, on a lot of factors, it takes a couple years just to get the brain fog cleared up enough that you can begin to dream or envision that future that you want for yourself and your family.
Yes, absolutely. And my listeners already know a lot of my story, but I was a stay-at-home mom for 19 years when I divorced, and I had gotten my associate's degree right after high school, but I didn't finish my degree because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I had done many part-time gigs, but in my marriage, in our home, my career wasn't a priority. So I had just gotten a degree when I finally insisted on it when the kids were in high school. But what I found when I actually went through the divorce was that the industry that I sought to be in was fairly closed to a woman of a certain age, probably for many reasons, but partly due to just all the technology involved that I would have to learn. And so, and really honestly didn't want to learn. So I ended up in real estate and then quickly specialized in divorce and ultimately became a certified divorce coach and started this podcast to help women like me who needed more help and hope as they were going through that process that they weren't finding in other places. And I couldn't have done any of this if I hadn't fought hard to get a fair settlement that included many years of spousal support. So just as a side tip, there are strategies to make that possible. So listeners, if that's something that you need, definitely reach out. But what I want to do now is just to kind of volley some tips on some mindset shifts that will help people to make this transition well, no matter what their transition looks like for them. And then, of course, I want to get your input and thoughts on each of these as well. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Okay. Well, my first tip is to lower your expectations. I once heard it said that expectation minus reality equals disappointment. And so if you can't adjust your reality, you have to adjust your expectations if you want to avoid disappointment. And I think that because we're women and we always kind of feel this way to some extent, there's a lot of pressure on us, especially during divorce, to do everything and to do it all well and to not look like it's a bother, don't break a sweat. And so I think it's important as you make these kinds of major life transitions to just give yourself a break. Don't expect too much of yourself or of your kids or of the situations that you're in. And don't let, their guilt or anxiety or any of those things to cause you to be someone that you're not. Just remember to breathe and take good care of yourself, and don't worry about the Norman Rockwell painting and the and the perfect little lunches that are packed with love and a note every morning and all these things. There's some things that will have to slide, and that's okay. Because what is the saying? You don't want to major on the minors, you want to major on the majors, right? So what are your thoughts on this, and how did your expectations change during your divorce transition?
Well, I had to learn about expectations, I guess. And there's a passage in the Bible that says, hope deferred makes the heart grow sick. Mm-hmm. And so what I learned was hope, expectations, I don't know, but anyway, it's what came to mind. But what I learned is if my heart is sick, if I'm disappointed, if I'm feeling that disappointment, then I've put my hope in the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. That if I'm feeling that place of disappointment because my expectation wasn't met, then it's like what you said, then I have to change my expectation. Mm-hmm. I have to change, I have to shift and put my hope or my expectancy in something else, something that it can be real and that, I can, and I don't want to say have control over, because that sounds like we're trying to be controlling, and that's not it. So does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to adjust your expectations so that you can manage the constant changes that are coming. And I think that's, really all it is. It's not control. It's just managing things well and being willing to go, okay, that didn't work, or this obviously isn't working. So, what could I do instead? And, sometimes that helps, obviously to have some support, if that's a friend or a parent or a sister or a life coach, whoever that is, somebody that can help you to think through these things and maybe expand your options that you maybe aren't thinking of, in some of these areas.
So here's a real simple, because we're all divorced women, example of that. So like when my husband left, right, I held on to this expectation or this hope that he was going to change his mind and he was going to come back home and all that. And every time, he would turn his back and walk out the door after dropping off the kids or whatever, my heart would get sick, right? I would become disappointed and because I wasn't doing the right thing or saying the right thing or whatever. And so, that's just a real simple example of, but it is. So I had to change my expectation. I had to change what I hoped in. I couldn't put my hope in him making a choice because I don't have any control over that. Right. So the reality was he was leaving. That's the reality. I had to change something in the way I thought and where my expectation and hope was that would keep me from living in that perpetual state of disappointment over and over again. And then as I did that, I could help my children and guide them into how to walk that out in a healthy, whole way too. So there's an example.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just reaffirms the statement that I have learned, that expectations minus reality equals disappointment. If you can't change the reality, you have to change the expectations.
Yep.
And you can probably apply that little formula to a lot of things. So thank you. When a woman is going through divorce, one of the first questions she usually asks is, can I keep the house? Here's how to know for sure. 5-star house homework with RCSD Realtor Annie Allen. That's me. Title condition, mortgage, appraisal, and credit. These are 5 important tasks that have to be addressed to make a well-informed decision about whether or not to keep the house. And I can't answer that until we look at each of those factors closely. Will your lawyer gather this information? Possibly, but unlikely. Even great lawyers do not address most of these issues because they're not real estate professionals, they're legal professionals. So don't make assumptions. Do your house homework. You don't want to make a decision without all the facts. Let's connect today to discuss your unique situation and find out whether or not it makes sense for you to keep the house. Before mediation is the best time to have this information. Email me at Annie@startingoverstronger.com or visit startingoverstronger.com and click real estate to learn more. Yeah. And so the next step is just to slow down. I recently read that new airplane pilots often think that the best thing to do when they hit a patch of turbulence is to increase their speed. A student pilot may think that increasing speed is a good strategy because it gets them through the turbulence faster. So that makes sense, right? But that might not be the right thing to do. Professional pilots understand there's an optimum turbulence penetration speed that will minimize negative effects of turbulence. But that actually reminds me of a funny story that I'll share with you now. And it's something I sometimes use as an illustration with my clients about this very issue. When I was 16, I'd just been driving a short period of time, and we lived in a raised ranch where the garage was in the back of the house, and you had to come down the driveway and make that big turn into the garage. And when you're 16 and you don't really know how the physics of turning cars around work so well, you might make some miscalculations. And so what had happened was that I was at the wrong angle and I bumped the side of the car, basically right around the driver's door area against the edge of the garage door. So what did I do? Stop, back up, readjust. Nope. I kept on going all the way into the garage with it scraping all the way down the side of the car. And it reminds me of the whole new airplane pilots thing, just going faster and just continue going when something has obviously gone wrong is not always the best solution. And so in this case and in many cases in life, when things don't look like they're going right, it's really best to just slow down and recalculate and refigure, okay, that didn't work. Now what should I do? Let's breathe through this, think through this. And so what are your thoughts on that?
The thing that I hear when you say that is, first, I wholeheartedly agree. Okay. 195% all the way. But the thing that I hear, because I've worked with so many women over the years, hundreds and hundreds, is you don't understand, right? Or all the reasons why that is not even possible, right? We can list all the hundreds of reasons why it is not humanly possible to slow down or to stop and to take a moment and reflect. And we know in our brain that, we're going to scrape the whole side of the car or, we know that in our brain, but there's something, it's like, how do you stop? So, so Annie, I'm going to throw it back at you, because I've got thoughts on this and stuff too. And we're just having a conversation, but, I would love to hear, because you're coaching clients and stuff. And when you're like, hey, lady, you just need to slow down a little bit here and think about this. How do you encourage them to actually do that when they're telling themselves and you all the reasons why they can't?
Well, we talk a lot about mindset, and I will agree that that is a very common response to this recommendation. And it really rests in a victim mentality.
Exactly.
And the inability to see your own power in every situation in life. And that is a hard mindset to unlearn. I used to live in it. So I get it. And so I always preface it by saying that to them. I totally understand where you're coming from. And yet I'm going to tell you that if you don't change your mind about the way you're thinking about this, you're just going to keep feeling the exact same way about everything you face in your life. And until you grab a hold of the reins and say, you know what, I do have the power to change some things. Let's talk about what I can change. Yes, obviously there's a whole lot of things you can't change, but what can you change? And then we just get on a micro level. I'm working with a client now who's got several kids and she's doing it all. And I'm like, why aren't your kids helping you with this? They're old enough to do this or this or this, and we talk about shifting some responsibilities to the kids because we're not doing our kids any favors by not having them prepared for the real world by the age of 16, 17, 18, whenever, they're going to launch. They need to be having had some experience in doing some of these hard things and maybe some of them aren't even hard. Cooking meals, doing their laundry, keeping their room clean, helping, with a variety of chores around the house could lessen some of the load on you, as a new working woman. And they should be willing to do that. And there should be consequences if they aren't, and that's a hard one, but it's a lot of that. And it's a lot of, okay, you're not able to be reasonable or think through this right now because you're just so emotionally overwhelmed. Could you get the kids to go spend the evening with their friends and go get a massage or do something, to just focus on you for just an hour or two and see if that doesn't change your perspective a little bit. I would say those are the two things that we talk about the most, is just helping to balance the load of responsibility in the home and self-care.
Yeah. So that's good. I feel like I've taken on your role here a little bit, right? So no, because I as you were talking and everything, I wrote down the word like self-care, and that's really what we're talking about. And it's that whole, you were using the analogy of the airplane. It's that whole, hey, I can't put my mask on my kids and help them through this if I'm not able to breathe and I'm dying. Right. And so that's what self-care is. And just, a little thing about my kids, and I don't say this to brag, I say this to encourage women that it is possible to, and number one, the mindset is we are not raising kids, we are raising adults. And I think that, that's one thing that we have to realize, and we see a lot of challenges in the world around us because I think, a lot of times parents have raised kids instead of the mindset of raising adults. So I would love to challenge your listeners and that, hey, ladies, it doesn't matter if they're 2 or 20, you're raising adults. And so having that mindset. And then all of my kids knew how to do laundry, scrub toilets, vacuum, iron, cook, clean. And every one of them, because they're all adults, they're 25 to 37 now. And every one of them called at some point in their adulthood and said, Mom, thank you so much that you taught me how to go to the grocery store. Mom, thank you so much that I can do my own laundry. My daughter-in-laws have told me, thank you so much that your son knows how to cook.
Amen.
Both of my sons, I think, do most of the cooking in their families and stuff. But so anyway, so ladies, I just want to, tell the listeners, it is possible. and that's part of the slowing down. We have to slow down enough to think through, okay, what do these guide rails look like so I can guide my child into successful adulthood? And so, yeah.
And that's what we're talking about today. Everything we're talking about is mindset. Almost everything I deal with my clients is mindset. We're telling ourselves lies all day long, every day, and getting in our own way because of it. And so we just have to start looking at things differently and challenging ourselves to look at them differently. And one idea that came to mind was using your lunch break, or even times when your kids are with their other parent or at school and you're not at work. You got to take advantage of the fact that you get these little snippets of time here and there. And you could sit and, peruse your Facebook for 30 minutes on a lunch break, or you could schedule some doctor appointments and do your budget, or, any number of other things in that same amount of time. You just have to learn how to structure that and be disciplined to do it. And, listen to podcasts, or go to a store and run an errand, or, meet a friend, or whatever it is that you need to do. Just do something to recharge in the middle of the day, or whenever you get those snippets of time without the kids, so that you have more time and energy physically and emotionally when you get home at night and it is time to spend time with your kids. And so even though your days look different maybe than they used to, you still feel like you have that control because you're taking care of what needs to be taken care of when you can. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, that's really good. I my ex-husband, when he moved away, he moved 4 hours away. So, and back in 98, there wasn't the 50-50, parenting and everything. So he had the kids every other weekend. So I was full on, for those 2 weeks, and then they'd go with their dad every other weekend. And I did. And sometimes, they wouldn't want to go. And I would sit there and I say, you have to go, because I want to be the best mom that I can be when you're here. And so you have to go. And so literally I'd get back home after meeting halfway and dropping them off. I'd close my curtains to my house. I'd clean up everything, and I would get my bottle of wine or my glass of wine, and I would go into my bathroom and turn on the candle, or light the candles and turn on the music. And I would sink down into a hot bubble bath, and I would cry for about an hour.
I was just going to say, I bet you there were some tears involved.
I just added my tears to that, but it was necessary.
Oh yeah.
And, and I'm so thankful that I had that space and that time, and committed to self-care so that I could be, a mom, and be present with my kids the other time. So it is, good advice there, Annie. Yay.
Yeah. And, it's all hard. It's a lot of changes all happening. And, I think that probably the thing that gets us the most in a tizzy when these things happen is not remembering that it's not permanent. You have to remember that this is just temporary. This is just a season of life. We're talking about seasons of change, and that's what this is. And it isn't always going to feel this overwhelming. If divorce teaches us anything, it's that nothing's permanent, and life is a series of changes, some that we call good and some that we call bad, but really we're the one that put those defining adjectives there. I think honestly, and the truth is there's no good or bad. It is what it is. And we get to decide what we think about it. And, and that goes for the divorce, that goes for whatever career changes we're facing. And with all of the little things that happen in life, each new change gets better over time. And the more that we get out of that victim mentality and step into that place of personal power where we know what our options are, and we've weighed them out, and we know what we're choosing and why we're choosing it, it just gets that much easier. And these kinds of major life transitions, whether it's divorce or career change or whatever it is, any kind of transition, falls into the same category, that things get better after the first few weeks or months or years, whatever it is, according to, the specific issue. And, so you just have to just accept what is at the moment, right? And just get through it and trust that it is going to be okay. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, life is full of changes. I have taught a lot over the years on finding the treasure in transition. And, there's good change, like you said, or what we determine is good change, a new baby, a new house, a new job. There's negative change that, again, like you said, we've labeled negative, a divorce, death, all these things, but they're all changes. And when I was going through my divorce, okay, so I love the Word of God. I love the Bible, right? And so I was reading the book of Ruth and reading, my attention was caught on Naomi, who was Ruth's mother-in-law. And, Naomi goes back to Jerusalem and the people are like, "Oh, Naomi, we're so glad you're back." Da, 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 da. And she says, "Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara." And Mara means bitter. And I love that because it was like, oh, the Lord allowed her to identify with bitterness. And she didn't stay there, right? He was going to redeem her. But in that moment, in that time, it's like, yeah, I'm bitter about this. I'm angry about this, but I'm not going to stay here. I'm not going to allow this season to become my permanent. I am not going to pitch a tent here. I'm going to recognize and acknowledge this is how I feel, and this is the season I'm in. But I get to choose, right? Again, if I'm going to pitch my tent here and stay here and camp here in this cesspool of bitterness and anger and resentment, or am I just passing through? Yeah. Right. There's hope on the other side. So yeah. So I love that it is not, it can be permanent, right? We can camp there, but we don't have to.
Unfortunately, a lot of people do. It's, if you don't have the right tools, you don't know how to get out of it. And so, but you bring up a good point. Throughout all of this, it's very important to stay tuned in spiritually. If you're a believer in Christ and in Father God, you know that He knows you. He knows your family. He knows your needs. Learning to juggle this new responsibility in your life is going to take some trial and error, but you have that support through your relationship and through the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And you will be blessed with ideas and insights as you go. You'll gain strength that you don't have now as you go. And you just have to, it helps you to put first things first, because it's all going to come out together. You don't have to have it all figured out, I guess, is what I'm saying. You just need to know how you're going to get through today. And I think that's a very important part of it. And that's true no matter what your beliefs are. You've got to stay grounded spiritually and tapped into that which feeds your soul and your spirit, and knowing that you're going to be okay. And I think that's the perfect spot for me to say that's really all I have today, is just to say, you can get through this. You are going to be okay. Share with us your final thoughts, Misty.
Oh, final thoughts. Okay. You're going to be okay. It is, I think that's the thing, Annie, that your life represents, that my life represents, that there is hope. And in the midst of it, sometimes it may seem all dark, but there are people out there that have made it through to the other side, that are cheering you on. Annie's cheering you on. I'm cheering you on. All of Annie's guests, they're like, yes, you can do this. And so, change happens. Seasons of change happen. And I love that. I love the fall. I love the idea of change. And so, thanks for letting me share a little bit of my journey with everyone, and just to be here with you and hearing more of your journey. So yeah, it's been great.
Well, thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure having you on the show and getting your insight into this topic. I knew as much as you've worked with women, you'd have a lot to say about it as well. So thank you for your heart and for what you've shared here today. And thank you, listeners. As the leaves are beginning to change and temps are beginning to drop, at least in our part of the world here in the middle USA, we invite you to stay tuned this whole month of October for more about Season of Changes. We will be talking about changing the way we approach the division of possessions. We will be talking about changing our vibration through healing, energy work. And we'll be talking about changing the way we communicate with others during our divorce. So there's much more to come, and we'll see you next week for more help as you divorce and hope as you are starting over stronger.